Welcome to episode 7 of the Blackbox Diaries with your hosts Alex and Chris, as usual, bringing you some of the latest cybersecurity news around breaches and threats and exposures that are happening in the world at the moment as far as technology goes. And as usual, we will be covering some Q&A from the community and those of you that have submitted questions. We really appreciate the engagement, and hopefully you're appreciating the answers. If you do like what we do this week or in any of the other episodes, we would really appreciate it if you do like and subscribe and check us out on any of your podcasting platforms. And if you do have any additional questions you want us to answer, please do chuck them through on our social media. And without further ado, we will jump right into it. Alex, my friend from America, how are you today?
I am doing freaking fabulous. How are you, Chris?
Pretty good. I'm actually pretty shattered. It's been a ridiculously long week at work. It's been really busy. Obviously, hackers never sleep, so neither should we. I guess that's
fair. No, that's fair.
That's kind of the rule. Yeah, I've been having a look at a few of the things going around at the moment. Obviously, I think I'm getting a little bit of conference fatigue, going to like various conferences and stuff like that. It's kind of really just throwing me out, but keen to get out on the motorbike this weekend and probably just chill out a little bit away from the screens.
Yeah, I'm hoping that within the next 6 months, maybe the wife will be like, hey, you should get a motorcycle. All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough sell, but just convince herself that or convince her that you deserve it as a reward for being such a fab husband.
See, that's how I'm going to drive that conversation. I'm going to say, hey, Chris recommends, since I am fabulous to you, maybe a motorcycle.
Well, I mean, a lot of my friends actually use me as their catalyst. Oh, Chris said I should do this, so I should do that. So I'm probably not the favorite person of many people's partners out there.
That's okay.
Yeah, but anyway, I wanted to run something past you, which is, do you like McDonald's?
You know what? I do. I love McDonald's French fries. That's my shit.
Yeah, so for me, I'm a huge fan of dipping chicken nuggets into a chocolate sundae, which is super weird for a lot of people.
No, it is weird, but bro, I'm with you. My daughter got me to try that, and it is freaking great. So viewers, you may want to give it a shot.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that it's random on a cybersecurity podcast to talk about McDonald's, but there is a method to the madness, because today McDonald's Instagram got hacked by an organization based in India. Essentially used it as a cryptocurrency scam, which was absolutely wild, and allegedly made $700,000 from basically a fake cryptocurrency called Grimace Coin. And for those of you that don't know, which you probably should, because Max has been around for a while, Grimace is the big purple dude.
Yeah, he is indeed the big purple guy.
So basically, yeah, they changed the description of the Instagram account and everything as well, basically saying thanks for the 700K in Solana, and basically then were on their way with all the cash that they made after they tanked that fake cryptocurrency.
I mean, such is life. They've been hitting cryptocurrency outlets for so long, just hacking the snot out of wallets and everything. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and I mean, but I'm curious. It's really funny because, as you probably get as well when you're talking to people and they're like, oh, what do you do for work? Oh, I work in cybersecurity. Can you hack my Instagram? Can you hack my Facebook?
Oh, dude.
You probably get that all the time, right?
And almost weekly, yeah.
Yeah, but then you talk about it like with them and you go, look, honestly, those types of companies, yeah, you kind of generally not going to, like, let's be real, there's a lot going on there, and MFA and all the things and the security controls they all have in place. Like, unless you're really just, an advanced threat actor really targeting those organizations, you're probably not going to, go after it. So again, this literally is going to come back to the user awareness component, which we always talk about, because realistically humans are the biggest weakness, right? what's the easiest way to get into the Instagram account is to basically just fish the creds and get in, and maybe even get around the MFA in the usual ways that you can get around MFA. I would probably say, there's even the potential that they could have got the information from a stealer log or something like that. If it's usually if it's a social media account, it's kind of a shared account as well. So it's going to be really hard for them to kind of pinpoint how and where that happened.
Sure.
It does say that they did get the account back already, so everything's all back to normal.
I wonder how much they paid for that.
Who knows? But I mean, like, realistically, yeah, it was like, what does it say here in the article that I'm reading? It says that the result of the scam was a market capitalization that was boosted up to 20 million before dropping down to below 1 million. So they boosted the value of that coin up, and then essentially just tanked it when they sold everything off and made away with the cash.
Yeah, that was their goal the entire time, and I'll tell you what, it's not surprising, really. As a matter of fact, my father, the older generations are starting. They all grew up investing in larger companies like oil, so on and so forth. And now, they're hearing about, a lot of these different technologies, and crypto is one of those things. And they're like, oh man, I've heard about crypto a lot. And then some scam artist, sends an email, says, hey, you should invest in this crypto. It's going to make you a billionaire. And these older generations don't really understand the whole scamming process yet, and they're falling victim. So I wouldn't be surprised to find out that over half of the individuals who bought that coin are probably between 50 and 70. That's my guess.
Yeah, I mean, true. And I mean, from this particular attack, it's generally called a rug pull attack in the crypto world. And, and as you say, it is pretty common, and it's usually essentially a scam where the owners take the funds from the coin's liquidity pool and then basically vanish,
Sure.
essentially making the coins worthless in the end.
I mean, how are you going to get it back? How are you going to get that money? You're not.
There seems to be new crypto all the time, really, right? So you never know kind of where this is going, or
exactly
what you're investing in, or if it's like legitimate or anything like that. But the interesting thing here is that the whole exchange and everything like that, the campaign and everything that they did, it ramped up to that price in less than 30 minutes.
That's no surprise.
That's the power of social media to do these particular types of things.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads me into another topic that we're going to discuss a little bit later, which is obviously malware as a service, because obviously social media is playing a big part in that as well. But honestly, the other thing that I learned out of this McDonald's attack, or I suppose it's an attack, right? They got in, so let's call it an attack. The other thing that I learned out of it when I was researching this and then looking into it was that Grimace, like the the big purple thing from McDonald's.
Yeah.
I never actually knew what he was meant to be, but they actually came out and said what he was meant to be as part of this attack. Is he? Apparently, Grimace is the embodiment of a milkshake or a taste bud.
Shut the hell up. That's why they had the Grimace shake a couple years back, huh?
Yeah. So he's meant to be like the taste.
Get that, America.
Oh, wow, dude, don't get me started on that, because that was a surprise to me when I went over there. But yeah, like, can I just get like a small Coke, no sugar? And then I looked like a devil for saying no sugar, but that's what happened. And then also the small was like 1.5 liters. So I will I'll leave the viewers to ponder that. Go research it. The McDonald's Instagram takeover for the cryptocurrency scam that happened today ramped up the cost of the coin, did the whole rug pull, and tanked the coins after making 700K and then vanished. So stay safe with your social media, multi-factor authentication, don't account share, make sure you hold your marketing teams accountable.
So if you don't mind me jumping in real quick on that, so for our viewers that are probably, I've had so many people ask me about cryptocurrencies and like, losing their wallets or whatever. And they do, Chris, you're right. They're always like, hey, can you help me get this back? Can you help me get this back? And you can, right? There are ways, but generally law enforcement isn't going to get you there, right? We did a forensics analysis on somewhat recently. It was within the past 24 months, where someone's wallet was indeed taken over by scammers. And I won't go past the initial identification, but what they're doing for you viewers out there, if you can identify the wallet and where your coin is going, you can actually watch all those coins, whatever cryptocurrency it is, goes to one specific address with really no owner. And from that address, it gets dispersed out to a ton of different addresses. That is really the single point of failure for law enforcement, whether that be local law enforcement, Interpol, whatever, right? FBI. There is a point that you reach where there's just too many different avenues of approach, and your likelihood of success in actually getting that returned is very low. But I'm always willing to try.
100%, good insights.
Yeah.
Okay. The next thing that I want to talk about with you, Alex, is I guess essentially Australia is being kind of rampaged by RansomHub lately. With they're kind of going on a little bit of a tirade against ANZ companies. So we've covered a couple of companies that have been ransomware and data breaches and things like that around Australia. For some reason, most of them are in Melbourne lately. I don't know what the deal is with Melbourne. I don't know if people down there are a little bit more prone to clicking on dumb stuff. I don't know what's going on, but I'm from Melbourne, so I can say that. But realistically, it's interesting that I mean, we obviously see lots of malware campaigns and hacking campaigns and ransomware campaigns, all those types of
Sure.
things. But it's getting quite crazy here in Australia. I guess I kind of wonder if it's because in some instances our government has constantly come out and said we want to be the most secure country in the world by 2030. We've got this policy, that policy, we've got this strategy, that strategy. We're really focusing on securing everything. And then also the minister, a little while ago when she was still here, also essentially said that we're going to authorize hackback and we're going to go and hunt down everybody who kind of attacks Australia. So I guess do you think that might have something to do with it? I mean, if you tell somebody you're going to go after them, there's a lot of people who probably see that as a bit of a vendetta to come back at you, right?
Sure. I mean, back in the day when I wasn't all super nice in cyberspace, I would probably take that as a challenge. Yeah, absolutely. And then another thing that I want to bring up to that point is, China and Russia, for instance, specifically, started to identify cyberspace as a warfighting domain back in the 90s, right? And I know the United States took until 2011, 2012 to develop Cyber Command, and a little late to the punch, right? So I don't know, man. I love Aussies to death. I love Australia. It's a great country, great people. But I mean, if we're just now talking about this, yeah, you're awesome. But if we're just now talking about this, it's important to understand that. I mean, there's a lot of nations that really started to focus on these things far earlier or later than, earlier than we did. I'm speaking about the United States specifically.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. Yeah, I would take that as a challenge. I'd be like, all right, so you tell me you're going to come after me? Prove it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's getting a little bit crazy, and obviously, when you make claims like that, and when you say, we're going to be the most secure country and all that sort of stuff, you want to hope that the country's in a point, and organizations within that country are at a point where they have everything in place to be prepared for this. And realistically, Australia is not. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors around us saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but there's a lot of work that really needs to go into supporting particularly small businesses here in Australia.
Sure.
If you look at why that came out in the news recently, and people pushing down the path of RansomHub is targeting Australia, is because they've dumped terabytes of Australian data on the dark web, and most recently, obviously the caravan company, Kempe Engineering as well. They are organizations that part of this RansomHub attack essentially, and then the data dump. I can't remember the specific name of the caravan company, but we're talking caravan companies, engineering firms. We're talking pretty much all the people and organizations that we've talked about in the previous episodes, jewelry stores. A lot of these are, some of these are small businesses, and a lot of the attacks at the moment in Australia are on small businesses. And I guess the problem with that is really, it's really hard to recover from a ransomware attack or a data breach if you are a small business, right?
Oh yeah. Not many businesses have the ability to pay what ransom, or what are they called, RansomHub groups like that, are asking for the data. So that if they don't get paid too easy, they're just going to release it out in the public, and then somebody else will pay for it. So yeah, it does. It'll ruin a small business easy.
100%. I think it kind of starts to highlight as well the importance of, maybe cyber insurance. But again, it's like one of those particular types of scenarios where if you do have cyber insurance, they do research these organizations. They do have a look out there. Like, is that company likely to have insurance? Is that company, what's their annual turnover? How many staff do they have? What,
Sure.
what do they have on their website? Sometimes your website is a good indicator of, how secure you actually are. Like I
That's
think
true. Yeah.
MediSecure previously in Australia, there was a thing doing the rounds on LinkedIn after they got hacked, saying that their website down the bottom had a essentially like a copyright disclaimer saying copyright 2012, and they got hacked essentially last year type attack, which would indicate that maybe they're not really keeping that stuff up to date. So probably the securities are pretty relaxed, right? So I think starting to look at that, and even like open source stuff, or previous data breaches, information from stealer logs and password leaks and things like that, to see if there is an instance of password reuse. You can really get a lot around the security practices of a company from those types of free sources. And I think that's really helping them to kind of spearhead their attacks here in Australia and focus on those particular organizations. They're also probably the ones that are the least protected. Let's be fair.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's why we do external and external pen tests before we do an internal pen test. Kind of proves a big point, and it lets the tester know, hey, this is what you're getting into. So if the external or if the internet facing network is open to attack, the internal's screwed.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we have a community question coming up about antivirus as well, so we can talk a little bit about internal defenses and everything like that. But you're 100% right. The internal is really just kind of that assumed breach scenario anyway, where you're going to say, like, when you've got access, what can you do, basically? And the external component is really like, can you get to that point to get internal access? Because realistically, most of the time, if you have the internal access, it's already game over. I was having a conversation about that the other day with somebody. Like, they were like, I'll bet if you do a red team and you have, the rules of engagement, and this is the crown jewels, and this is the objective, you want to get to that one server that has that piece of data, or whatever it is, right? If you can't get to that one server that has that one piece of data, maybe that's really far down the track, like it's all the way over there, but you might get pretty close to it, and you might not get to that objective. And a lot of the time I've seen clients come back and go, but you didn't get the objective, but but here's the 32 things that I did that shows that your organization and your controls are still absolutely trash. So I think the external place is a really good place to start. Having a look at your security posture, particularly if you are a small organization. There is a lot of smaller security companies and stuff out there that do focus on small to medium sized businesses. And, as I've said before, it's worth just reaching out. If you are a small business, you need to start realizing that it's not a matter of, if, but when, because we've seen time and time again, and particularly with this particular type of campaign, it doesn't matter the size of business that you are, and particularly last week with the cows, right? That was the very small one PC, um, farm essentially that, was focused on milk production from cows, and they
Yep.
had, I know that it was animal loss of life, but they had loss of life as a result,
Sure.
and one of our viewers did point out on the YouTube channel that could have been a hospital.
Yes, it could. Loss of human life. A lot of people don't understand that. A simple malware attack could essentially render physical casualty. So,
100%. But ultimately, at its base, you're going to see essentially more and more of these breaches happening in Australia, and more of these breaches happening globally.
yeah,
When
it'll be
things
a global problem.
when things start to clamp down a little bit more in Australia, and if a lot of the initiatives that we've talked about here do play off, it might become just that little bit harder. I mean, I know that there was some information being thrown around, a suggestion of making paying ransoms illegal here in Australia, which would essentially kind of cripple that market.
Yeah.
It would be the objective is really to be like, well, what's the point in chucking a ransomware out in Australia when it's illegal to pay a ransom? And then there was some counter arguments around that was essentially like, well, maybe it's not necessarily a ransom. Maybe there's other ways that you can get paid so that you can kind of get around that loophole to make money still. And I won't go into those, but there was a lot of talk in the community about different ways that attackers are still going to be able to kind of exploit that loophole. And yeah,
My
I think
concern would be like with groups like Anonymous back in the day, right? They didn't give a shit about money. It was all about just opening up the public's eyes to garbage taking place in the quote unquote system, right? So
right.
my only fear with Australia will do what Australia wants to do, but um, you know, making it illegal, like legitimately a criminal act to pay a ransom to get your data back. I think that's great in a sense, but then I can also see from the other perspective where if it's a group that doesn't give a shit, if that data gets paid for, they just want to take the business down, or they want to just weaken the infrastructure of Australia as a larger entity, and then you start hitting critical infrastructure, and then we start seeing a downfall. It's always going to be like we always say, Chris. There's always a vulnerability. There is no way to get around it, and I think this is one
Mm.
of those situations where I don't think there's a perfect answer.
Yeah, and I mean, I did see another thing the other day, particularly about RansomHub as well, that they are using a malware tool now that switches off endpoint protection also. So, I
Really?
mean, yeah, so I mean,
God.
the stuff that they're doing, and the stuff that these organizations are doing are getting um a bit crazy actually, and pretty advanced. So, I mean, if they have a tool like that, then that starts to look at, you know, if you're subscribing to your EDR provider and everything like that, like, and you can turn that off, you really want to make sure that you have other controls in place that detect, anomalous behavior on the network,
Yeah,
anomalous
sure.
behavior on devices, those types of things, to make sure, even probably, like a solution like Threat Locker or something for your application allow listing. But like, realistically, yeah, it's getting wild out there. And it's funny you mentioned Anonymous actually, because I did read an article the other day that they're back essentially. I think, part
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
hacktivism stuff going
yeah.
around at the moment, and we did touch on that a number of times, the hacktivists, I mean, it's good to see a non-furry hacktivist group coming back, I guess,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
making the news, because it seems to be the furry activists are the ones taking the limelight at the moment. But yeah, I did see an article the other day that Anonymous is out there, you know, um, fighting the good fight in some instances, taking down exploitation websites and stuff like that, or and like
Sure.
human exploitation websites.
Yes,
So I'm fully supportive of that sort of stuff.
I am too.
But
I
yeah,
am
I
too.
think that yeah, not always was everything that they did terrible.
Yeah, I agree. That's where Batman should have been, is in cyberspace, because we need more of that.
Yeah,
Um,
true. Exactly.
yeah,
Taking down the bad stuff. But yeah, I think
yeah,
ultimately it's really important that small businesses get the fundamentals right. And we do have a lot of government initiatives and government grants and stuff like that that small businesses in Australia can start to look at to make sure that they're getting people in to help them, be more secure.
sure.
But they really most definitely need to just start paying attention now.
Yeah, you brought it up earlier, Chris, and I'll stop here. But um, you brought up that these small businesses. A lot of times they have trouble affording large scale pen tests from large scale organizations. But what I want viewers to remember is that there's a lot of security companies out there that are actually considered small business, and they're more than likely willing to work with a small business to provide that security in order to help take a step up on their business. So yeah, look for them. They're out there. Promise.
100%. And what you'll generally find is a lot of people in our industry do it because we just want to help.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
there is always a solution there somewhere. So yeah, and I mean realistically, you can always reach out to us on our social media and stuff like that. If you have any questions, we're happy to provide some free advice here and there. All right. So, an interesting thing that's been coming up a lot recently, Alex, is malware as a
Hmm.
service. We have talked about it a little bit in some of the previous episodes, gone back and forth about it. It is something that is massively, massively on the rise. I remember seeing a presentation at the OSCE conference in Australia recently from, I believe it was Abnormal Security on these phishing as a service campaigns using AI integration now because what doesn't have AI integration these days? Um, and it's actually quite a cost effective way to target organizations, and you combine that with security researchers and security professionals, software developers and stuff like that now kind of turning to the dark side to deal with the cost of living crisis and, make a little bit of cash on the side. Some of
Sure.
these programs and applications and everything like that are becoming like pretty well written and pretty well legitimate, and I
Yeah,
think it's something that's becoming a massive problem. And what we just talked about with Australia being targeted, it's making that easier, right?
it is. Yeah, 100%. Um, Same thing goes for the military, right? I mean, if you can't pay the people who are good at things, right, they're going to go find a place that will. And I think a lot of the top developers, I mean, some of them are finding that they could be making millions while they're only making 60,000 $70,000 starting out. So I mean, they might be putting their skills into practice in an illegal setting, which I mean, essentially will have a negative impact on whatever nation. But malware as a service specifically, I mean, that's a concept, or yeah, that's a concept that has been kind of going on for many years.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, there is we're seeing that double extortion component now, which is obviously the ransomware part, and then if you don't pay the ransom, we're going to leak the data and all that sort of jazz. And you know, these particular ransomware and phishing as a service and malware as a service things, as I said, it's really cost effective. So your return on investment is going to be quite significant if you get, one of those ransoms paid, or if you
Sure.
get an organization, um, to pass you the money and whatnot. And obviously, if the organization's insured with cyber insurance, you can, you, it's probably going to be a bit of a successful hit for you to get that payment. You know, I think that what one of the things I was reading about it recently was Darktrace was saying that multi-stage payload emails there was 1.5 million of those identified between 2023 and 2024 in a 6-month period, so end of 2023 to middle of 2024. That is
Yeah,
an incredible amount.
it is. It is. But again, I mean, a lot. It was funny because we were talking about it earlier. I was looking at a couple slides that came out about that specifically.
Whatever.
Anyway, so they were talking about what malware uh, definitions were being utilized, right? And I was amazed to see that a lot of the older ones, right, that have been around for a long time, were actually being put into the fray. Half of me likes seeing it because that's kind of where I came from. But I mean, duh, right? Remote access Trojans, what a delivery method. I don't think that's obviously where it's being paid for. But like we were talking about with McDonald's, right, where they had that fake coin that was
Yeah.
being sold and people were buying it and then they canned it. Uh, Something that occurred to me, I guess, during our conversations was maybe those individuals didn't know they were purchasing coin. Maybe the initial approach or the initial contact, maybe that was a remote access Trojan, and then their wallets were stolen that way, and then the actual scammer sent those transactions. That would be interesting
Yeah,
to see
that's
if that's
possible.
how it went.
I think, like, when we reference Darktrace as well, one of the other things that they reported around the Malware-as-a-Service stuff that's actually really interesting, and I'll tell you why in just a second, was that 550,000 malicious QR codes were detected within the emails that they sampled, right? Now, the reason that I find that interesting is because if you've been paying attention to the Australian news recently, which you may not be because America, um, our government has essentially kicked off a new campaign to release a new form of digital identity for us in Australia that they're saying is going to be more secure. Now, what that basically is going to be is that when you go to the post office or to anywhere that you need to provide your ID, instead of handing over your driver's license and your passport and all that information, that organization requesting your verification of your ID is going to generate a QR code for you, and then you will scan that QR code, and then the background system and server will do the validation check without you
Sure.
actually having to hand over your data, right? Or your
Yes.
personal details. So it will come back, give you a big green tick, kind of like the COVID checks back in the day when that was
Yeah.
happening. And big green tick, yeah, you are who you say you are. Now, the interesting thing, as a cybersecurity person, when you start to think about QR codes from that perspective, and that being the method that they're using to validate, is that they're an incredibly interesting and easy attack vector. So with these particular types of malware and ransomware and everything like that floating around now, and the cyber attacks that are out there,
Yeah.
if we go back to the small business idea that we were talking about before, that these guys are all getting targeted pretty heavily, if those are the organizations that are now going to be expected to collect this particular type of token, this particular type of data, what's to stop them essentially hitting a small business and then compromising that particular software or system to generate fake QR codes or create
Nothing
its
does.
own type thing, right? And so
Yeah.
now you then have a big data problem on your hand for the Australian population. So, and all it takes is for you to go out and say, hey, this is what I want to do. And you can buy that malware as a service. And then you can probably watch some YouTube videos, probably catch up on a few things online, figure out how to compromise that small family business over there that collects personal information through this QR code. And then, maybe they're not too tech savvy or tech aware, and you can put up a fake QR code on the website. People come in, scan
Sure.
it nonetheless, enter their details into whatever phishing portal has been set up. That's it, you're done.
Yeah, QR codes are a big one nowadays. Hey, real quick, so viewers, just so you're tracking, Chris brought up some pretty important things, especially new new people purchasing malware, or people who don't really understand what they're doing, trying to download and run these remote access Trojans, stuff like that. It's important that you understand that that's illegal to do, right? It should only be utilized in a testing environment unless it's being utilized, in the Department of Defense for specific purposes. A lot of these pieces of malware, most of them, to be honest, without the latest patches, you're not going to find the latest updates. But I do recommend, skimming through GitHub here and there, see what you can find if you want to learn more about how they operate. But I will tell you this. A large amount of those remote access Trojans that are available on GitHub, be very careful, because a lot of them come pre-packed, not with ransomware, but with coin mining. It's going to slow your computer down. You're going to be having trackers installed on your computer without you knowing. So be smart before you download stuff.
100%. And I mean,
Yeah,
like, it all goes down to, the research capability and the learning capability, right?
sure.
Like,
Yeah,
it's the same. It doesn't matter. Like, even if you connect to, hack the box, offsec, whatever, you're still playing with, proof of concept scripts, malware. You don't know what you're really grabbing and putting on your system. So always do it in a virtual machine or in
yeah.
a sandbox type environment, But the other thing I want to kind of segue into here, Alex, around the malware as a service stuff, is there is a new macOS malware at the moment called the Cthulhu Stealer,
Ooh,
which targets Apple users' data. Now, the interesting thing about it is it's an information stealer. It's a new information stealer, which, if those of you remember, we talked to Jai about this a few episodes back in episode 4. And it harvests a whole bunch of information. Obviously, threat actors are trying to get a bunch of stuff these days through information stealers and credentials, personal data, everything that they can get. The interesting part about it is that this particular type of malware and information stealer is available as a malware as a service model, and it only costs $500 a month. It's capable of targeting all kinds of macOS, and it's bundled with binaries and all of the things that it needs to do to basically steal all your stuff. So I mean, it's really interesting that even this one that you would consider relatively new, and
sure.
targeting obviously the unhackable Macs. Like, I have a Mac, I don't need AV. I have a Mac, I don't need
Yeah,
security. There's still people that have that argument
sure.
with me on the regular, but it's interesting that this type of attack is going to cost you $500 for a month. With I would assume that has like your normal subscription model. There's probably no 12-month minimum. You could probably just
Likely.
subscribe for a month, probably make bank, and then subscribe to a different one next month, I guess.
Sure.
But that's an indicator of how cheap this stuff really is. And also, patchy Macs, don't click on links, do all that normal stuff like that you need to do securely. Like, just because you're on a Mac doesn't mean that you're not going to get attacked, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, some people don't know. So if you've noticed, Mac OS and iOS, the people that generally utilize those platforms don't really use them for a technical reason, right? They want ease of access, which makes total sense. Easy to click on apps. They know where everything is. It's simple for them. But what a lot of people don't realize is Mac at its heart is really just a Linux machine. There are some safeguards in place that do render a lot of attacks not useful. But
Mm.
dude, there is no such thing as a zero vulnerability system.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the funny thing is, right? It comes back to general awareness of what you're actually putting on your system, right?
Yep.
When you look
Yep.
into this Cthulhu Stealer, right? It is a program that really it impersonates legitimate programs, right? But when I say
Mhm.
legitimate programs, it impersonates a program called Clean My Mac, which, obviously they're going to go for that. But the interesting ones that I find here are it also impersonates Grand Theft Auto 4. Now,
Oh.
don't let me get sidetracked here on telling you that if you game on a Mac, then you have bigger problems than malware. Let's be real.
It's true. That is true.
Now, the other one that I find interesting is it also fronts as Adobe Gen P, which is basically a bypass product to get around Adobe's Creative Cloud without having to put in a serial key. So it's kind of like a cracked version of the software, right?
Yes, sir.
I haven't downloaded cracked versions of software for a very, very, very long time since my youth because of the fact that 98% of them have malware in them. So just be smart. Like,
Sure.
Realistically, you get what you pay for. And if you're not paying for your serial key, you're probably getting malware.
Yes. Yes, that is true.
All right. We've come to the time of the podcast where we're going to cover off some of the community questions that have been sent through. And I have an interesting one to throw over to you, Alex.
Okay.
Starting off strong here with, is antivirus worth it these days, or are we past it?
Oh man, that's a good question, and I can't really fight that person for bringing it up. Chris, I'm not sure what your stance is on this, but I'm anxious to hear it. So whenever people ask me, and I get asked a lot about antivirus software, anti-malware, Malware-bytes, things like that, and dude, I hear so much good stuff about Windows Defender nowadays. I only utilize Windows Defender for my personal computer. When it comes down to businesses, large organizations, I think it's important to have things like EDR, XDR, just so that you can remain safe and identify issues that come through that maybe Defender isn't focused on. EDRs and XDRs are far better for an Active Directory set than just a baseline Windows Defender. But for personal use, man, I use Malware-bytes to run scans here and there. I do not utilize it as a paid service. Yeah, what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, look, antivirus is an interesting one. So I think we need to think about this from two angles, right? You have
Sure
antivirus, which is probably going to be the more common thing that you're going to purchase for your home PC. Less common now in corporate environments with, the implementation of like EDR and XDR and things like that are now, kind of the norm. It's interesting that you say that you use only Windows Defender. So for the listeners out there that want to hack somebody, go after Alex. Just kidding. No, I think you bang on with that. Windows Defender is pretty much more than enough for your home PC these days.
Yeah.
I think that something important to pay attention to is that your traditional antivirus organizations and your antivirus vendors like Norton, McAfee, Trend Micro, and all of those have realized that Windows Defender is pretty much good enough and it ships with your operating system, right? So that's now why you see so many different things included with your antivirus product where they try and upsell you to include, dark web monitoring, email compromise, password vaults, all those types of things. The reason that they're charging you more for those now is because they know that the antivirus is not any better than their competitors these days.
Sure.
And so they're trying to make things a little bit more, right? And let's be honest, the dark web monitoring and everything like that, it's not groundbreaking stuff that they're getting for you. It's all open source stuff that you can find out for yourself. Go check out haveibeenpwned.com and just look at that and see if you're on any leak lists and things like that and change your passwords regularly. I think the important thing here for you to pay attention to is if you do have an antivirus product or anything like that, it's what I would consider one of the last lines of defense. If your antivirus product triggers, you have a bigger problem. It means you've clicked on a link somewhere, you've installed, like one of the cracking softwares that we've talked about before, or you've installed something you shouldn't have. And, just pay attention to what you're clicking on, pay attention to what you're installing, make sure it's all legitimate vendor stuff. Pay for license keys, don't try and crack them. And, when it comes to a corporation, if you're in charge of deploying something, make sure you look at something like, an EDR solution, like Huntress or whatever that pays attention, or their MDR solution where they manage it for you as well. But make sure you're putting something in place. But for home and small offices and things like that, Windows Defender is absolutely fine.
I can agree with that. Definitely don't, just think we're past it. We're not. I mean, we never will be, right? Even when AI takes hold, we're still going to be developing EDR and XDR and other antivirus software that utilizes AI. They're going to be competing with each other. Just watch out for fake stuff.
100%.
Yep.
All right. I might move on to the next one, Alex. And it's a
Sure.
follow-on question from the one that we answered last week for June. She's sort of come back and posted some more information around that, which I'm interested to get your ideas on.
Sure.
She basically added a little bit more context to her previous question, if you remember. It was around AI and the use of AI and cybersecurity and whatnot. The
Sure.
context that she's now provided is would like a little bit more of a view on how AI could be trained on historical vulnerabilities to find patterns of potential 0 days in any system or a combination of software instead of just scanning individual files and code. Kind of like behavior-based malware detection, but a little bit more proactive.
Yeah, sure. Developing a artificial intelligence package that does that. I mean, it's gonna be scanning files indeed, but it's gonna be doing it at an incredibly fast pace. I think what we'll see in the next 5 to 10 years, I'm gonna say, you know what, that's bullshit. I'm gonna say probably about 3 years, you're gonna start seeing some platforms pop up where uh, they are developed in a way that it watches those historical norms for malware development and basically predicts, um, based on newer technology, what how you could leverage that newer technology to defeat, right, current architecture. So yeah, I don't think that's been put into practice at all yet. I don't think we're there, but I think that's probably a pretty accurate outlook. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to kind of strip that back a little bit around the behavioral based detection and the anomaly based detection, because that's
Yeah,
something that these systems have been doing, prior to AI, and historically have been doing that anyway. When you're putting something in your environment, you give it, 30 days of training essentially to make it, know this is what normal traffic looks like and normal behavior looks like in our corporate environment, so that if
sure.
anything kind of strays outside of that, it gets flagged as like an anomalous behavior. I think AI is most definitely going to enhance that. And as I said, like when you go to security conferences, or if you go and Google the best vendor for XYZ or whatever, it's always AI enabled something. Everybody's trying to put some kind of learning model and everything, to back their software and their
Yeah,
product these days. And, that does come from somewhere. So I think that there is definitely something at play where it can bring out, the historical vulnerabilities and the historical issues, to enhance, what it's looking for.
sure.
I think we're not quite there yet for all of those particular types of products, but I think that
Yeah,
it's definitely something that can be incorporated. We have automated pen testing using AI, we've got automated vulnerability scanning using AI, but it really does kind of detect stuff that's already kind of known. But I think, if we can start to bridge the gap between what's already known and anomaly or behavioral based activities, that's probably where the products are going to start to come together
sure.
in the next little while. And I think that I'm really excited to watch that space and see how that
Yeah,
advances. And
yeah,
obviously, Alex and I are working on a few different things outside of the
yeah,
podcast that are going to incorporate these very things into that as
yeah.
well. So watch this space as well, for some of the
Yes,
stuff that we're working on. But realistically, yes, I think that that is something that most definitely can and should be done.
110%. I totally agree.
Now, I'll bring your attention to this one, Alex, because this one is something that is probably going to be close to you again. We get a lot of questions about the military because everybody loves that that's your background.
I think
Um,
they just like to hear me rant. I think they like my rants.
that
Rah.
it's possibly that, or like, I always have this vision that kind of at the end of you ranting and talking and everything like that, or talking about your military history, I just imagine that meme of somebody sitting at the desk going, Jesus Christ, it's Jason Bourne, and like I think so anyway, the next question that I have for you is, uh how strongly would you recommend the military as an entry point into cybersecurity?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I think when I read that question, I understood it differently. Okay. So as an entry point to cyber. So basically, what I'm hearing is how strongly would I recommend utilizing the military as a way to get into cyber? Is that correct?
That's how I read it as well.
Okay. Depending on what country you live in, right? Because I'm not 100% on Australia's cyber programs within their local Department of Defense or whatever have you. But in the U.S. military specifically, because that's something I can speak on, I recommend it really to anybody that's interested in cyber. And I say that not only because you're serving your nation, right, but the programs and schooling and education are going to be paid for. Most likely, I would assume it would be the same in Australia. So, or really any country that cares about its defense. um, but for us, I mean, you immediately get placed into like the OSCP or SOC program and OffSec. So these are a lot of courses that are going to enable you to build a solid foundation in cyber, whether it's on the offensive or defensive side, right? It's not one or the other. It's you're going to get a good base. So I am going to tell you, whoever it was that wrote that, strongly, very strongly.
That was
What do you got?
actually a friend of mine named Sheldon. He's a
Oh,
very, very,
nice.
very, very
Good
smart dude.
question. Good question, Sheldon.
He's a blue teamer. Um,
Is
I
he
know
planning on joining military service?
I would highly doubt that, knowing him. And
Okay.
I've seen how he shoots on computer games. I'd hate to see how he shoots in real life. So,
Well, good news. U.S. Army Cyber does not really do a whole lot of, shooting 5.56 or whatever the hell ammo they fire now.
yeah.
Um, but what I always brought up, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Since he brought up the military stuff, I've always been building this concept in my mind about how cyber can actually be utilized in the military. Like how could they be implemented into infantry patrol, right? And Sheldon, I don't know if you're interested, but if you brought this question up, it might interest you. Uh, I would love to see, I always said a hacker in every infantry platoon, right? Just like there's always, one or two medics, right? And the reason why I say that, why they would be useful. A lot of times when we went on patrols, we would get hit by IEDs or improvised explosive devices. And these devices were initiated by, let's say, a cell phone, right? Which could really be manipulated by something as simple as this nowadays, right? This did not exist then, a flipper zero. But having someone on a patrol in, let's say, the lead or center vehicle that is able to identify anomalies in wireless or radio anomalies. I mean, that would save lives and definitely be a huge, what we call a force multiplier for the entirety of the military. So I love your question. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and to just answer something that you suggested to Alex, yes, I believe that the education in the Australian military is paid for and covered, but
Awesome.
it comes with a return of service. So I think
Nice.
that like if you go to the academy here, like the university here, I'm pretty sure you
Yeah.
have to serve in the military after you graduate for
Mm.
a certain number of years to kind of pay that back.
That makes
Um,
total sense.
yeah, so I'm pretty sure that's the case. But outside of that, I've never been in the military, so I only know what I had access to as a civilian, essentially, when I worked
Gotcha.
for defense. Um, I reckon we will close it off with one final interesting question here, which I think is going to have a little bit of a back and forth debate between yourself
Okay.
and I, which is
Sure.
what do you believe is the best online platform for security training? I'm a bit lost between choosing Hack the Box, OffSec Proving Grounds, Security Blue Team, and Try Hack Me.
I knew they were going to say try hack me. Everybody says try hack me. That's where a lot of people get their start. It makes or breaks a lot of people. Don't try one. Right. I will always tell you try multiple. I met Chris. I consider Chris to be my mentor in penetration testing, hacking alike. Being a cyber criminal and being a hacker are two completely different things. I can assure you of that. So I have learned a lot. And in order to do that, I needed to get on the platform Hack the Box. Now, Hack the Box is a spectacular platform. However, what I will tell you is all of my certifications come from OffSec currently. I do plan on taking a Hack the Box certification, but you have to understand that when I got my certs, Hack the Box was not yet offering that kind of program. So, um, yeah, all of them. You need to learn as much as humanly possible about the industry. What do you think, Chris?
Well, I'm going to tack on a quick question here for you, Alex,
Sure,
actually. And I hope it doesn't upset you. But when it
it
comes
won't.
to your offensive security certifications,
Yes.
would you say that you chose those because of the education path or because of ego and what the industry told you you had to
Oh man, of course you would ask that.
do?
I think there was an element of both.
Yeah,
To,
yeah.
to be completely, when I was chasing my OSCP certification, that was like an infantryman chasing the Ranger tab. I mean, that was everything to me, right? Because I wanted to be able to say, I am OSCP certified, right?
Right.
But here's the kicker, though, Chris. I did feel that way at first, right?
Hmm.
But when I got it, I started realizing that what that says about you is that you know what you're doing, but what it could do is make you just assume you know everything and stop practicing,
I
right?
know a lot of
So
people like that. Yeah.
yeah, so what I've done is I've maintained. I stay in OffSec. I still do practice labs. I still do all that. As a matter of fact, Chris, I'm actually retaking my OSCP soon. We had a good meeting with OffSec the other day.
Very cool.
Just
Very cool.
yeah, I just want to see what the new one's about. Sounds neat and pain in
As
the
long as,
ass.
they take the, as long as they don't take the old one off you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
you know, so I mean, I think, you know, that's one of the things that, I love the OffSec certs and everything like that. And they were kind of the pioneer of that kind of approach to training.
sure,
I
yeah.
think that there's a lot of other organizations that were listed here that have, contributed to the growth
Oh
of that
yeah,
style of
oh
training,
yeah,
right?
all
Like you
of
have
them.
Hack the Box and Try Hack Me. Like Try Hack Me doesn't really have, you get the certificates from that, but they're free. Let's be real. They don't have exams or anything like that. You pay $15 a month or whatever it is. But
Yeah,
fantastic platform to really kind of get your grounds sorted out. And their red team course is their red team learning path is actually really, really good.
okay,
I did it because, if I'm recommending training to people, I want to be across that training myself. So I did the red team learning path to see if it's worth recommending to some of the people I mentor and help with. Because
sure,
if I can say, look, I appreciate what was in there, or hey, maybe there's a few gaps here, but it would do this for your career, and maybe you should look at these parts of it. I find that a little bit better when it comes to kind of mentoring people and giving them guidance on what to do.
sure.
Um, I think that the OSCP, it definitely in our industry comes with a level of ego and arrogance if you
It
have it,
does.
and
It does.
and there's a lot of people who are like, I've got it, I'm amazing and everything like that. And, I generally don't even tell people that I have it because I just don't want to be like that. Or even perceived like that. So it's only really kind of when I get asked. The interesting thing here, which I found was amazing, is that they didn't include EC Council, which is just awesome because you just never should.
Sure.
And I think, I mean, the people at EC Council are nice. It's just that their certifications are not great. The exams are not great. I think, sitting a multiple choice question and answering, 70% of those correctly, calling yourself a pen tester is not the best approach, right?
No.
So when you have these other companies that are being listed that are, the pioneers of training the next generation of cybersecurity personnel, right? Again, Hack the Box. I love them. Their stuff is awesome. I have one of their hoodies sitting here. Their swag is awesome.
I see that.
They've got a lot of really cool stuff as well, and they obviously have the blue team stuff. But if you want to focus on blue team stuff, security blue team, it's the way to go. Forensics, malware analysis, all the really cool stuff. Security blue team is awesome as well. I think it's just try all of them. But obviously some of them are expensive. Some of them have expensive subscriptions. So my best advice would be think about which path you really want to start with in cybersecurity and look at which one delivers the best content for entry level to get into that. That might be doing CTFs on Hack the Box, but I would probably say out of all of them, for $15 a month, you could probably start with Try Hack Me. You get a lot.
Yeah, you'll at least find out if you like it.
Yeah, and there's so many learning paths on there that you will get an idea of what it is that you want to do, and then you can decide, like, do I want to go down the path of Hack the Box? Do I want to go down the path of Security Blue Team? Or do I want to, become elite hacker and get my OSCP or OSCE or whatever it is that you really want to do? But I would start with Try Hack Me. That's probably the easiest entry-level platform. And their stuff is pretty cool. Go collect some badges. The advantage as well, if using it to get into cybersecurity, Hack the Box, Try Hack Me, they have publicly available profiles, so you can put it on your CV when you're applying for a job, and then the prospective employer can go and look at the badges that you've got for pen testing. They can go and look at the machines you've compromised on Hack the Box. They can have a look at your ranks and everything like that to kind of gauge your knowledge level as well, which really can help with that recruitment process.
You know what? I saw that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It's definitely something that can be used for the recruitment process.
Hell yeah.
But yeah. All right. That brings us to the end of episode 7 of the Blackbox Diaries.
7.
7 weeks we've been doing this for, and I really appreciate, and Alex really appreciates that you've all been along for the journey so far and supporting us. Obviously, it's quite small at the moment, and that's completely fine for us. It gives us the opportunity to answer all the questions for you that we can and interact with you a little bit more. Hopefully you can interact with us a little bit more and like and subscribe to chuck in some support for us as we keep getting better and better, and hopefully improving the podcast on the regular. Hopefully we answered your questions and the community questions. A big shout out to both Sheldon and June for submitting 2 fantastic questions to us this week and also last week. Thank you, June. You are awesome. Next week, we are going to be looking at covering a few of the new things happening in the breach space and the security space. Obviously, again, community questions, please send them through if you have any ideas or anything that you want us to answer. But until then, Alex and I will see you next week. Have a wonderful week ahead.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.